What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Thank you for stopping by. If you're new here and you enjoy what you see throughout this video, hey, maybe consider subscribing. I'm almost at 1K subscribers and it'll be really awesome to get there. It'll be a lot of fun when I get there. I'll probably do a giveaway, but for now, let's talk about my first thoughts and impressions on the next generation consoles. So I got the Xbox Series X and S, and I got the PlayStation 5 all on day one, and I've been playing the heck out of them. My only exception, I still played the heck out of it before I had to send it back, was the Xbox Series X. I'm just going to quickly talk about my problem. I made other videos on this, but basically playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the Xbox started shutting down, and I didn't want to risk it being a software issue or anything like that, so I just sent it back, and I'm going to get a new one sent back to me. But I have been seeing online that this has been happening with both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox with next generation optimized games. So I have a feeling there's something going on with the next gen optimized games that is shutting down the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series. With that out of the way, I was still able to play the Xbox Series X for quite decent amount of hours. I would say in the 2-3 days that I had it, I played it for easily over 10 hours. So I still was able to get a feel of the console itself, how it runs, the big games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and also the other game I got here, which is Dirt 5. And just in general, the upgrades you're going to see right off the bat if you picked up an Xbox Series X within the launch window. So starting off with the actual console itself, its design and its heat and its noise. With its design with the Xbox Series X, in my opinion, it is the best looking next generation console, and I don't even think it's close compared to the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series S. I love the look of the Xbox Series X. I know people are just going to say, well, it's just a rectangular box, but I think it's super classy, super elegant, and it fits very well with my entertainment system and just looks like a beautiful piece in front of the TV, under the TV, or wherever you have it. One of my favorite things about the console is the green tint just under the top grill, because when I have it beside my TV in vertical mode, I sit down and I look over at my console, I see this really cool effect with the green tint, and I just think that adds a lot to the aesthetics of the console. So a lot of people are gonna have different opinions on the aesthetic of the Xbox Series X, but in my opinion, it is the best looking next generation console. How loud is the Xbox Series X? Xbox Series X for me has been the quietest of the X, S, and PlayStation 5. I have my monitor right in front of me, and if I'm playing my Xbox Series X on my monitor, I have it right behind my monitor, and I don't hear it. It's crazy. Even when I'm playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I don't hear the fans. I hear absolutely nothing. The disk drive is relatively quiet, and overall, it does a really good job of not making you notice that it's actually there. In terms of heat, my Xbox Series X, it got warm to the touch, like normally, because it's a computer. You felt hot air coming up. I don't think it has any overheating issues. I really don't think that was the reason why my Xbox was turning off, because in my video where I talked about my issue, my Xbox would turn off when playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, even when I had unplugged it from the power for hours on end. Within 5 minutes, it would turn off. Until I did a factory reset and everything seemed to be okay, but I decided to send it back to be safe, because it's too much money to risk on having a faulty console. Now, moving on to how the console actually performs. Now, I've played these two games that had next gen builds in them, so you could upgrade them, get the Xbox Series X/S builds in them, and they look absolutely stunning on the Xbox Series X. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is one of the best looking games I think I've ever played right now with 4K, and then when you add in that 60 frames per second as well, it just runs so smoothly. It is one of the best experiences I've had on a console. However, there are still bugs in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but I feel like the 60 FPS and the 4K kind of sort of makes you forget a little bit about them, just because of how smooth it is when you're running through the fields in this wide open, beautiful world. And I do not want to play this on my Xbox One X while I wait for my Series X to get back, because I just know that downgrade to 30 frames per second is going to decrease my overall experience with the game. So that's the jump you're going to get by getting a Series X. You're going to get that 4K 60 FPS. The other game I've been playing is Dirt 5 on the Series X before I had to send it back. Another really stunning looking game. It looks absolutely amazing. I don't know what people were talking about, what reviewers, or I know there was a bad rap for Dirt 5 for some weird reason. I didn't really read into it. I didn't do any research on why people were kind of hating on Dirt 5 in the way that it looked. It makes no sense to me. The game looks really, really good. And the weather effects as you go through a course, how it changes the look of your vehicle, how it changes the way that you handle your vehicle in the middle of a race, like when you go from wetlands to drylands. it's really, really awesome. So this game on the Series X looks the best. I mean, you can't beat this racing game in the way that it looks. And if you've seen a lot of stuff and you've been deterred from buying Gear 5 because you've seen some random hate on it for the way it looks, I definitely wouldn't listen to any of that. I would definitely recommend checking out Gear 5 if you like racing games, obviously. But the experience on the Series X has been amazing. I played this on the One X because it does have that 60 frames per second, and it looks good on the One X, but the Series X really elevates it to the next level. So performance-wise on the games built for the next generation, I mean, the Xbox Series X does a really good job of giving you the best experience when playing these games on a console. Now, backwards compatibility, I didn't have as much time to dive into, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say the games that I did play, like Gears 5, looked amazing. It was probably the best Gears 5 experience I've had. I played some Halo 5. There's no optimizations for the Series X. I played it because I had seen people say that it does feel better. I think it feels a bit snappier. There's less like lag between when you're doing action on the controller and in the game, but you can't really, I wouldn't say you can notice like a massive difference between Halo 5 on the One X to Series X, or even Xbox. Well, maybe the Xbox One original one, because I haven't played it on that in forever. But from the One X to the Series X, Halo 5 wasn't that big of a jump. I think there was like a slight increase of responsiveness on this Series X. Yeah, in terms of backwards compatibility, it's unfortunate that I haven't been able to put more time into it, but I definitely just want to talk about those two games that I played. And I think backwards compatibility in general is going to be great on the Series X. I don't have really any doubts about that, but I will put more time into backwards compatibility and probably make a video talking about my experience with backwards compatibility once I get my Series X back. In terms of load times, the Xbox Series X is way faster than the Xbox One X, so that is a huge upgrade with the Xbox Series X and S. Also, that quick resume feature with the Xbox Series X and S is actually really, really well done. You literally don't have to wait now for more than 5 to 10 seconds when you want to jump between games. And that's the feature that I'm excited to continue to utilize as the generation goes on. And moving on to the controller. Now, the controller is something that is extremely interesting. Now, I have some nubs on here because these came free when I bought my Series X from EB Games. I gave them out for free, and I've been using them, and they're pretty cool. They're like just makes it a little bit more comfortable on the sticks, but they're not needed if you don't have them. But the controller to me is really interesting, and I know I just said that, but it's because the Xbox One controller, if you look at it at first glance, is very similar. And everything from we've seen about the Xbox Series X controller before the consoles were launched were pretty much people just saying that the controller itself was the exact same as the Xbox One controller with slight adjustments. And I would say that is true, but I don't think people mentioned or talked enough about what these adjustments have done, and they really kind of downplayed them in general, because I think that the Series X feels incredible. I think that it is the perfect controller for my hands, at least ergonomically, and the slight adjustments that they made really perfected this controller. Now, the Xbox One controller has always been my favorite controller of all time, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here saying, because the competition right now this generation is very strong with the PlayStation 5 controller, but I think the Series X controller is going to end up being my favorite controller of all time by the time this generation is said and done. I'll tell you why. They've made small adjustments. It's a little bit smaller. There's a little bit of a difference here, I think, on the shape. They got some grips on the back, they got some grips on the trigger, and they have some grips on the bumpers. And the way that they actually shaped the bumpers and the triggers are slightly different. It looks like they're a little bit tinier. I can't be 100% sure on that, but it definitely feels better on the Series X controller. And overall, this controller in my hand feels better when I'm playing games for long periods than the Xbox One controller. And the biggest thing of all that they changed that is really good is the D-pad. I like the D-pad on the Xbox Series controller better than on the PlayStation 5 controller. I know it's gonna be controversial because people love that PS5 D-pad, but I like the clickiness on this thing. I think the D-pad, they did an amazing job with the Series X controller. The triggers, I mean, we can talk about the triggers all day, but I still think these triggers are way better than the PlayStation controllers, even with the adaptiveness in them, just like the feel of them and everything. And when you get the impulse rumbles in there, it feels really, really cool. So that's it. That's what I think. It improves on the Xbox One controller. The improvements shouldn't be downplayed as much as people have been downplaying them. If you are used to the Xbox One controller, I think when you pick up that Series X controller and you play for hours with it, you're gonna feel that difference and be like, wow, okay, they definitely made this controller feel better. They definitely improved on the One controller. You know, that's gonna be a controversial take on the controllers because people who love PlayStation are gonna think that I'm crazy for choosing the Series X as my favorite controller of all time, which will kind of foreshadow me before I talk about the PS5 controller. Yes, I still do like the Xbox controller better than the PS5 controller, but we'll talk about the PS5 controller. Overall, though, the Xbox Series X has been a fun time. I'm excited to get it back in my hands. I'm excited to play more of it. And I personally do not think, though, however, it is a console you need to go out right away and buy. If you're somebody who's watching all the hype from everybody getting the Series X, you're somebody who's watching all the unboxings, all the videos, all the gameplay. If I were you, I would wait. I would wait a couple of months before picking up an Xbox Series X because right now there are definitely issues with the console, with next generation in general. And you want to avoid that batch. You don't want to be in my position when you pick up the console. You don't want to get it. You don't want to get all excited and have to send it back after a few days of use because it's having problems. And then in terms of the performance, like 4K 60 FPS is incredible. Like Assassin's Creed Valhalla is amazing on the Series X. I don't want to play it on my One X. I do not want to play it at 30 FPS. And I think that jump from 30 to 60 is a big enough jump to warrant eventually going out and getting a brand new next generation console. I just don't know if you need to get it within the first couple of months, because if you've never experienced that 60 FPS before, you're not going to know the difference. And I think that until more stuff comes out that really utilizes 4K 60 FPS well, then is the time to jump into it. Then at that point as well, we'll probably have more first party games from Xbox, and all of the kinks and all of the issues of the launch consoles will be worked out. So I think that is the smartest thing to do. But I mean, if you've picked it up on day one, you're definitely experiencing that next generation feeling when you get that 60 frames per second. And you're going to get those crazy fast load times compared to the previous generation if you already have the Xbox Series X and you've already gone out and picked one up in the launch window. Okay, so that's it for the Xbox Series X. The Xbox Series S, I'm not going to go too much into it. Basically, I think it's an amazing console for the price you're paying for it. 1440p looks great. The SSD is super fast. Games load really fast, sometimes even a little faster on the S than the X because the assets are less. They don't have to load in those 4K assets. So overall, the Xbox Series S, if you're somebody who just wants a 1440p/1080p machine to get into the next generation, you have a 1440p monitor, you want those fast load times, it's a great console. You can't really go wrong with the Xbox Series S. Next, we have the PlayStation 5, starting off with the aesthetic and looks of it. So if you take a look at my unboxing video for the PlayStation 5, I was blown away by how big it was, but I also thought that it looked pretty neat. I thought it was a decent looking console. And I had it for the first day. It was standing vertically, and vertically it looks okay. And then I brought it downstairs and I put it horizontally under my TV. And that's where things fell apart for me with how it actually looks. I think the PlayStation 5 is now after the hype has worn off, is a pretty ugly console. Horizontally under my TV, it just doesn't look good. It stands out, but not like the way I think they were going for. Like they wanted to stand out to be that centerpiece that everyone notices and goes, wow, what is that? It stands out and you're like, wow, that thing's ugly. But I mean, it does, like the aesthetics and the look of consoles don't matter to me that much. I just wanted to be completely honest with how I actually think the console looks. However, one thing I do like about the looks of it is the light bars on center black part of the console, how it kind of lights up and it gives you different like blue, white, and I think yellow when it's in rest mode. That part looks pretty cool, but that's about it. And that stand, I mean, for somebody like me, it's annoying as hell. For people who are going to set it and leave it there, it doesn't make any difference. It's nothing to really talk about. But I've moved my PlayStation 5 I think 4 times already, twice to my monitor and twice back down to my TV. And every single time it's taken me like 10 minutes. Well, okay, maybe 10's an exaggeration. Maybe 5 to 10 minutes, I'd say, to put the stand back on or to take it off and put it on, because I have to go find something to unscrew it. Then I have to put the screw in the thing, and that sometimes doesn't work and jams. So that's annoying for me, but I can see for most people that won't be a problem, and probably not even something worth really mentioning. And yes, it's massive, but it works well and it cools well and it's relatively silent, so that's why it's massive and that's why it's a good thing. With that being said, moving on to how it sounds and how it feels to the touch. So it's not hot. I think that the Series X gets a tiny bit hotter to the touch than the PlayStation 5. In terms of sound, the PlayStation 5 is definitely louder. There's a noticeable difference in sound between the PS5 and the Series X in my opinion, but I also think it's because I have a PS5 that has a little bit of coil whine That's a problem. Not really an issue. It's not something you need to send your console back for. I'm not going to send mine back because it's not significant enough. But when you have the PlayStation 5 running, you hear a little bit of like sound coming out, a little bit of buzzing in my PS5. It is Qual 1. It's nothing to be worried about. I've had no issues with it so far. But you don't have any of that with the Series X, at least with the one I had. At least so far, I haven't heard about that. The disc drive on the PlayStation 5 is extremely loud. That's a big difference. When you put a disc into your PS5, it sounds like very loud. You hear it spinning, it goes like really loud. So that's a big difference. But besides that, when you're playing games, you can't hear it. Like you can't hear it. It's not like the Xbox One X, which I thought got decently loud, and it's not like the PS4 Pro, which I never had, but I heard that it got real loud. It's nothing like that at all. So they did a really good job as well with the sound design and the actual heating or the cooling for the PlayStation 5. In terms of performance, I've played Spider-Man Miles Morales here. I got the cool little reverse cover on there. Amazing game, short but amazing game. And I've played Demon's Souls so far. I've only put about 2 or 3 hours into this. I've never played a Demon's Souls before, and I've never been into the Souls style games just because I haven't got into them. And I'm terrible at this game, but I find it decently fun. I'm gonna go jump back into this now that I've finished Miles Morales. And both of these games look awesome. Like both of these games look incredible on the PlayStation 5. Demon's Souls, I don't believe has ray tracing, but the game blew me away with graphically how it looks. It's an incredible looking game. It's a game you want to show your friends as kind of like a showpiece as to what the console could do. On top of that, from everything I've heard from people who play this game, it's an incredible game. So you get that as well. Then we got Spider-Man Miles Morales and loved it. A great, fun game. Playing in 60 frames per second is just a way better experience than when you play the original Spider-Man on the PS4. And it's just such smooth combat. Miles Morales has cool moves with his electricity and his camouflage and all kind of stuff. And it's a cool game. So if you have a PlayStation 5, definitely pick up Spider-Man. I couldn't recommend it more. Even though the campaign is relatively short, there's still a bunch of side missions and stuff to do. Now, staying on Miles Morales, there's 2 game modes in it. There is fidelity and there is performance. And the fidelity is amazing in the graphical ray tracing and all that cool stuff that goes on in the game. Like, I was like, wow, this looks good. The fidelity mode is incredible. It really is, but it's not the mode you want to play in. It's the mode you play in for 10 minutes to show off to your friends, or if you just want to be wowed by some graphics, you want to go on the buildings and look at all the cool ray tracing and how well it's done. That's the mode you want to play in, but you don't want to play the game in that mode. You want to play the game in performance mode on 60 frames per second, because that's where this game shines. Yes, image quality is reduced. Yes, ray tracing isn't as good, but it plays so much better. 60 frames per second, so much smoother and so much more enjoyable. So in general, I've been extremely impressed with the performance of the PlayStation 5, and I'm really happy that I picked up just for those 2 games right now. And I think that we're gonna get tons of amazing experiences on the PS5. This is just the beginning, and I'm really excited to see what other games come out of Sony Studios and just how well they're going to be optimized on the PS5. In terms of load times for the PlayStation 5 with Demon's Souls and with Spider-Man, the load times have been blistering fast. That overall is a major upgrade when getting the PS5. And now we get to the biggest piece of the PS5 that has the most hype, thing that people have talked about the most and are most blown away by. And I was blown away as well. I wouldn't say as much as a lot of people, but I was blown away by this, and it is the PS5 DualSense. So the PS5 DualSense is really cool. It has haptic feedback, so you can feel things going through the controller. You can feel what's going on in your game, kind of with the way that they do the rumble. It has the adaptive triggers, which can change the resistance on the triggers depending on what you're doing. And the best way to experience this controller is through playing Astro Bot. That's by far the best way you're going to experience what this controller can really do. It does have features of adaptive triggers and haptics in Spider-Man and in Demon's Souls, but it is not nearly as pronounced and utilized as it is in Astro Bot. And the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers, I have to say, are the real deal if developers implement them, particularly in third-party games. I think that's going to be the deal breaker, or that's going to be the big thing that sets it apart from other controllers, because you know these controllers are going to be utilized in first-party games. Like I said, they were utilized in Spider-Man and in Demon's Souls. But I found with Spider-Man, it was utilized, but it did nothing like to really enhance the experience that much. I can't really say that it has. I mean, you had adaptive triggers when you were swinging put a tiny bit of resistance on the bottom of the trigger, so like you were here, you push down, there'd be resistance, but it didn't do much for me, at least. I know maybe for some people it was incredible, but for me it didn't do much to really enhance the experience of playing Spider-Man. Demon Souls, I don't want to really judge this yet on how the controller functions, because I've only been playing as one character and I haven't found yet that it has done much. It has haptic feedbacks, but I haven't found. I'm playing as a priest right now, and I haven't found the adaptive triggers do anything, and the rumble isn't anything that really enhances the experience. But I've been reading that people, when you shoot bows or you use different weapons and different classes, it really does. So I'm not going to say that it doesn't fully enhance the experience in general, but for me it hasn't done much. So in terms of how it's enhanced the games as I've been playing the most, it's been cool, but nothing that has blown me away yet. But Astrobot definitely blew me away, and that's like the tech demo for it. So that's going to be the determining factor going forward. Can games utilize the DualSense like Astrobot utilized it? And if they can, I think that's going to be a massive thing. Now, like I said, I still think the Series X is going to be my favorite controller compared to the DualSense. DualSense will have those amazing features that I'll want to try out, but for me, it's the ergonomics and comfortability that I have with the Xbox Series X that still makes me gravitate towards that controller. The biggest difference for me is being the thumbsticks. Like I love the dagger thumbsticks. I'm still not the biggest fan of the thumbsticks beside each other. My fingers, when I did the unboxing, I didn't think they would hit. My thumbs still hit sometimes when I'm doing it. That's just me. I have relatively big hands. So that's why I still think, for me personally, the Series X controller is going to be the better controller for this generation. And for a lot of people though, they're going to love the extra additions that they put into the DualSense with the haptics and the adaptive triggers. I think they're great, and I'm excited to see how they're utilized. And also, one more thing I want to mention is that this controller blows the DualShock 4 out of the water. Like, everything about this controller is better, premium feeling, and all of that great stuff, the material. So it's like they did a massive jump from the DualShock 4 to the DualSense. Now, should you go out and buy a PlayStation 5 on day one? And I'll have to be honest with the PlayStation 5 as well, I don't really think there is that massive of a reason to go out and get the PlayStation 5 in the launch window as well, because we're seeing a ton of issues with the PS5 too. I did a video on the launch issues for that, and I really think you should just wait until those are all worked out before you get a PS5. Now, luckily, I haven't had much issues with my PS5 at all. It's shut down once playing Miles Morales for a random reason. It's been fine ever since that. It does have slight coil one, but that's about it. And I also think you should wait on what third parties are going to do with this controller, how they're going to utilize them. Now, I know Call of Duty is utilizing the triggers for the gun, so every gun has, I think, a different feeling or something. Problem with Call of Duty is it's shutting down consoles, so you can't even really play it. At least for a lot of people, it's shutting down consoles. I've seen lots of comments in my video about talking about the issues where they're saying they're playing Call of Duty and it's not working on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing with shooters is that if you're playing on online multiplayer, you're probably going to turn off the adaptive triggers, because especially with games like Call of Duty, you want to shoot faster than the other person, and if you have resistance on the trigger, you're going to shoot slower than somebody who doesn't. So I think people are going to be turning off the adaptive triggers when playing online. But I think in general, wait to see how third parties utilize it, and if they start utilizing it well, I think this is going to be a big difference maker going into the next generation. My overall conclusion is both consoles are great. They're both just like really cool next generation consoles, way better compared to the PS4 and the Xbox One. And I think that you should definitely get one of them or both at some point, but I think you should definitely wait a couple of months. Just have a bit of patience until the kinks get worked out in those launch consoles, so you just don't have to deal with any of that crap. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Let me know which consoles you already picked up. If you've gotten one, let me know what you think about the console, and do you think that others should wait, or should they go out and get a console right now if they can? Thank you guys all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you disliked it, hit that thumbs down button. If you enjoyed what you see throughout this video, hey, maybe consider subscribing to help my channel grow. Almost at 1K subscribers, I'm going to continue to cover content for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series, and when I get to that 1K, I'll do a giveaway, and it will be a lot of fun. Thanks again for watching. Thanks for all your support, and I'll catch you in the next video.